Hariri. I'm one of the co-founders of Think3D. And like you said, we just finished doing CultureCon yesterday, which was our culture conference. And I just want to point out that all of the hosts from 1 Million Cups were there. We actually put it on, and I'm here this morning, so I don't know how I feel about that. But anyway, so Think3D is we do culture consulting. So we're a leadership development group that specializes in organizational culture. Our background was mostly in finance and sales and things of that nature. We worked for various Fortune 500 companies over our time. And during that time, what we saw was from both sides of the coin, kind of the effect of not having an optimal culture. So we saw from the employee perspective what kind of happens after a certain period of time. Because when you have the pleasure of working for a business or organization for a decade or something along those lines, you also have the opportunity of creating relationships. And you start to see people get married. But unfortunately, when you get there long enough, you start to see people get divorced, and you start to see the strains on relationships. You start to see what happens to people emotionally and mentally when they don't necessarily have a culture that is based on their health and their growth and their development, right? And so we saw that. But then we also saw the flip side of it, what happens from the leadership perspective. Because as we got in higher levels of leadership, we saw the immense amount of expense. We saw what happens when you lose tons of hours from FMLA because you won't change for the rest of lights. And we saw what would happen when people didn't have someone to talk to or didn't feel valued or didn't feel connected to anything. We saw what the numbers that went to attrition. And so we said that there was something that needed to be done. And what we also realized from our business is that oftentimes people are more likely to listen to a consultant than people who are in their employ. And so that's when we decided to leave our jobs and that comfortability and then and strike it out and do entrepreneurship. But we knew it was important. We knew it was valuable. Then we had the second piece of it, which was convincing people of the value, because culture is difficult to invest in. Because it touches everything, it can be ambiguous and it can be obscure and it can be this big kind of grand general idea. But culture actually does touch each and everything that you do, and that's why we put a special focus on leadership in particular. 70% of businesses do not feel that they have the type of leadership within their organization to take it to the next level. They don't have a succession plan because they don't feel like they have the leadership in place. The other thing that was a huge piece of us being able to take that leap is millennials. That's one of the big conversations. That's probably the one that we get the most. And what that did was that put a lot of pressure on people who weren't understanding how to communicate with this emerging workforce. That combined with the very low unemployment rate put it in a position where a lot of businesses had to consider the effects of culture and why that was valuable that didn't have to do it before, because that's a true competitive advantage. And one of the things that we say is that you can't catch up on culture. Again, if you pay your people more and somebody has the resources, they can pay their people more. If you have better equipment, somebody can go out and get that equipment. But you can't go out and just get a culture. That's something that has to be cultivated, has to be developed, has to be invested in, and it takes time. And so if a business is doing that, they will have the competitive advantage. That's the other thing that we wanted to do. We wanted to be the competitive advantages for businesses. We wanted people to be able to see that when they were looking at two businesses, side by side, all things being considered, with the exception of the fact that this business is a Think3D trained business, meaning that they have a special focus on culture, that would be the difference. That would be something that would attract people to a position, because we truly believe that is what inspires people, and that's what makes people want to work for a business. As well as that, for our normal consultant piece of it, where we actually work with businesses. So we work it in kind of 3 different ways. And so the way we say that is that we can passenger, we can navigate, or we can drive. And so the passenger piece of it is we will come in usually quarterly or something along those lines. We'll give various information, we'll assist, people can call us, we'll connect, but they're pretty much running the show. We're just kind of coaching them and guiding them. When we navigate, we can put together plans, strategic plans on how they can go about various things. We facilitate some parts of it, but they still are in general control. And then we say we can drive it. In those cases, we would come in and we actually would do the hands-on training. We would actually help establish some of the strategies or processes that would go into it, and that might include anything up to incentive plans all the way to attendance policy. So we can touch a lot of areas in that particular way. And then also we have Think3D University, which will be going online by the end of the year, and that will give people access to Think3D, which will allow them to get our training virtually so that they can follow the training. It gives the businesses an opportunity to be able to see who's engaging with the content, to assist them, to see where people are struggling, have opportunities, and help them throughout that process. So we're really excited for that, and we think that's going to have a big effect. Last but not least, what we try to do is create a brand of events for people that are a little bit different, CultureCon being one of them. CultureCon was one of our brainchilds, and the focus of that was to bring people together around culture, to have it a little bit more curated with higher level speakers. One of the things that we wanted to do was raise the level of our thought leaders. So we wanted to create a stage for our thought leaders within the community to be able to talk about culture and how it connects with their industry or things that they think are important. We think we just have a huge amount of talent within the community, and we don't necessarily always need to reach outside of the community for people to be able to speak on so many subjects. So we wanted to create a stage for that and bring people together who are focused on culture. So those are the main things that we are in right now. When we deal with businesses, one of the things that we typically do is we will come into a business. One of the first things that happens is that we survey, we communicate, we observe. We try to learn the business as best we can so that we understand the common language, the lingo, the things that they do well. We customize everything that we do. It's nothing that's in a box. We customize it for our businesses, because one of the things that we were the most frustrated with is that when we saw businesses or using consultants, people would go in and they would say, if you do this, your business will work better. And they sold the same thing to manufacturers as they did to banks, as they did to fast food or restaurants. And it doesn't work like that. All of those things have very unique challenges. They have very unique situations. And even within each business individually, they have very unique makeups in terms of personalities and how those people get along. And so we try to customize that based on what the current circumstances are for a business. So it's shorter work because it fits them specifically. So those are some of the key things that we do at Think3D.
Thanks, Bonnie. Pretty much go with the hand raise policy and sling some questions at Bonnie.
Yes.
As far as the online portion, which it sounds like you're about to kick off.
All right.
So I've worked for a small company where there was no online training, and I could see that I would engage with it and be excited to learn. However, where I work now, there's like a tremendous, ridiculous amount of online training.
Right.
And so if that was introduced, I'd be like, oh, super.
Right.
So how are you getting buy-in, or is there something you're doing to differentiate your online training to actually be engaging and not let me just click through this and get it done?
For sure, as much as you can make online training interesting, right? And that is really just that is really just the difficulty with it, right? When you're not there with someone and that person can't engage you directly, it's just less interesting. So part of that we can't fix, but the particular platform that we use gives us an opportunity to do some things technically that on a lot of platforms you weren't able to do previously. In terms of a kind of choose your own adventure element. Where even when that person re-engages with the training, we can determine whether or not, we can literally ask them, did you do this or did you do that? No, you didn't? Well, then go do this. And then you did that, and you can go here and do that. So we can even customize it based on how much that person is currently engaging. The other piece of it is, what's really nice is that our particular platform will allow us to do white label with companies. And so versus us going on a company's platform, sometimes their stuff can go on ours. And so it can be within a situation where it's a different type of platform, works a little bit better, but that business can still input their content, so they can still have it all in one suite. The other thing too is it gives a lot of different information that allows direct supervisors to participate more, and so they can see when a person is struggling or not engaging, or if that person hasn't done it, so that way you can intervene a little bit quicker. And then there's us. I mean, quite honestly, I just think we're more interesting than most people who are there. Right, if I can be honest. Yeah.
So just kind of piggyback on this, so who is your target audience for your online training? Is it the CEO, because that seems like where it's got to start, or is it to your entry level?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I mean, it is attractive to CEOs because they have to engage, because they can engage with it less. That's really the reality of it, right? And so ultimately, when we deal with businesses, usually the greatest ROI happens with middle management. those are the people who have the greatest span of control. And so even though theoretically you want to start with the top because you need that buy-in, and we do work with those folks, but in terms of the people that we need to actually engage with the materials is generally middle management. When you have people who have a span of control of 1 to 12, 1 to 13, 1 to 15, then you have a situation where if that person is not being developed, and generally just by the nature of middle management, that person is getting squeezed from both sides. So no one normally has more pressure than leadership that is in the middle. And so if we can affect those people, that's usually how we affect the front line greatest, and then we kind of work back up top. But we're always working on the top folks. But the biggest thing is enterprise, which is businesses and organizations, but there will be a membership for, or at least a track for individuals. So even an individual that is an entrepreneur or a small business owner or whatever that just wants to get better at themselves, they will have the opportunity to do that as well. Let's go.
So now that you've done some speaking, with the companies that everyone always gets excited the first 30 days, maybe
Sure.
even 60 days, they're, yes, we got this.
Sure.
Do you follow up with those companies, and have you seen success?
Yes.
Or is there further meetings to take place after that? What do you focus on?
Buy-in is huge, right? And people really wanting to do it. So one of the things that we did, and we self-funded, would have been great to use somebody else's money, but one of the biggest problems with that is that we needed to be able to make moral decisions, right? And you can't do that with other people's money. So for us, there's certain situations where we had to be able to go in and we had to be able to walk away from money. And as a small business, an upstart business in a growth pattern, you want all the money you can get, right? But sometimes we got to walk out and say, you don't really want to do this. You're not really engaged. You don't really want to do this. And a lot of times owners want us to come in and they say, fix them, and then we'll be fine. Well, it's not a them thing. And a lot of times we have to go in and we have to sit down with leaders and say, you're one of the biggest problems. And so we got it. So how are you willing to grow? And so some people don't necessarily want that experience. And so everybody's in the boat. That is our primary thing. If everybody's not going to be a boat, if everybody's not going to be engaged, if everybody's not going to participate, it's likely not going to work. One of our clients, and one of our favorite clients is Rapid City School Districts for their nutrition department. And when we came in, these ladies, just wonderful ladies, but one of the things that they needed is to get some buy-in. They're doing some really cool things there, what they call rapid foods, and so they're trying to give more choice to kids, change the area, the ambiance, and all of that to let them understand vegetables and healthier options and more grab-and-go type stuff to give them basically more control of what they put in their bodies and educate them a little bit more. They also developed food trucks to be able to go to some of their kids that have travel impediments during their summer feeding programs and all those type of things. They're doing these amazing things. But that type of change is very difficult for people who haven't had that type of change for a long time. And so part of the thing that we did in there was work with them. And we've been working with them for a year and a half now. And the change is just so immense. And it's amazing. We helped them develop their belief statement, which is ensuring successful tomorrows through extraordinary moments today. And what it was helping them understand what they do for these young people, and that those extraordinary moments of being kind and showing grace to these young people can be something that ensures their success and helps them go back to class and be excited. And so watching that growth is one of the things that we're most proud of. And that's what fills us, right? Is really making change and helping people get to where they want to get. Let's go here and then I'll get back there.
I'm kind of an organizational behavior junkie.
Yeah.
So when you go in and assess a business, how do you get the individuals you're assessing to be honest versus idealist with how they interact and how they assess the culture?
Well, that is the beauty of having third party, right? That's part of the value. I mean, honestly, just for no other reason than just having it be somebody outside of the organization, people are more likely to be honest, right? Because the survey would normally come from us. And so they're more likely to be honest because they don't, they're suspicious of it. And quite honestly, they have a right to be. Because even in anonymous surveys, when a person gets them back, particularly if you have a smaller business, somebody's already like, I know this was John. I know it. I know it. Right? And so people automatically sometimes develop those type of things. And the goal for us is to, and that's one of the greatest signs of success. Our goal is to get from anonymous surveys. Because even if you get good content from a survey, the fact that it had to be anonymous still speaks highly to the state of your culture. Is that people don't feel safe telling you things that you might not want to hear. And that is the death knell of innovation. That is the death knell of true and honest communication. And that is the death knell of culture. And so eventually we want to get away from the anonymous service anyway, but coming from a third party helps us be able to do that and get honest feedback. And then we're able to kind of break that out, and then we meet with those leaders and we're able to help them metabolize it. So it becomes less about this person or that person and about general themes and how we address it.
Do you work solely with businesses on establishing, cultivating, and renewing culture within the organizational structure of the business, or do you also work with businesses on culture on the customer experience side of things?
One and the same, you know.
It just bleeds into.
Yeah, one and the same. So sometimes we will specifically deal with customer issues. So your customer service process, all of those type of things. So sometimes we will specifically help facilitate that. But it's a holistic view, right? And it's just a matter of internal or external customers. They're all customers. Because at the end of the day, we believe in the concept of the business of you. You are all your own businesses. When you go home, you have expenses, you have shareholders, you have accounts receivable, you have budgets, you have all the things that a business has. And a business is not doing you a favor by hiring you, it's an exchange. So when you go into a business, they're giving you monetary benefit, you're giving them time, energy, and talents. It's an exchange of things. And so when we talk about customers, everybody's a customer. If you're not working every single day, similar to a relationship, if you're not justifying a person's participation in a relationship each and every day, that person should probably evaluate whether or not they want to be a part of that. Loyalty, honor, integrity, all the attributes that we hold dear are all daily pursuits. None of them are fixed places, right? And so you have to be earning that every day. And that's the same is true of your customers and the same is true of people that are in your employ. And so when we deal with customers, for instance, Just Capital does a list of just companies, 100% of the top brands as determined by consumers that they feel are just companies. And the highest thing that they use, the metric that they use, is how they compensate their people. So consumers are concerned with how much their the employees are being compensated. Consumers care about the working conditions of the web. As you pointed out, ethical fact, people care now about where things come from. They care about how people are treated. And if you're not doing that, not only will it affect your ability to be able to retain your employees, but it will affect your ability to be able to retain your customers. So. Thank you, man.
Whether you're in the stages of discussing with the company whether you're going to come in and work with them, or you've gotten in the door, do you find any trends in terms of pushback? Is it management that is less likely, or that's more likely to present adoption issues, or is it people further down that are more of the workforce?
The pushback comes from everybody in some way, shape, or form, right? For different reasons. That's just the nature of it. You know, it's going to the gym for the first time if you haven't been for 5 years, right? It's going to hurt, it's going to be painful. You know it's good for you, you know it's better for you, you know it's going to help you, you know it's going to make you feel better, you know it's what you should do. Right? You still, you know what I mean? Like, you still don't necessarily want to go. Right? You know what I mean? You still don't necessarily want to do those things. So it's going to be different for everybody for every reason. So people at frontline are normally just suspicious, right? Because there has been some half-hearted versions beforehand of how we're going to address this issue, address that issue that didn't come through. Usually a lack of consistency. Same reason why all relationships don't work. A lack of consistency, a lack of coming through, all of those other type of things. So they're just suspicious. You know, it's one of those things that is a teeth suck. So, you know, they come in and they're like, culture, here we go. Right? It's an eye roll, you know what I mean? And so those people are just naturally suspicious. Then when you go to the middle management level, they know that they're the ones that are actually going to have to manage this. So it's just another thing on their plate. So now it's just like, oh, culture, now I got to do this, and now I'm going to have to do this, right? And so we see right now the birth of culture committees, okay? Which is interesting. It's a nice step, right? But you don't have a sales committee. You don't have an accounting committee. You have a sales department or people. You have accounting departments or people. We know what companies take serious, and then we know what's a nice to have. So for them, they're not going to focus on the nice to have when they're being evaluated on the stuff that quote unquote is important, right? You miss a culture committee meeting, nobody's coming after you. You miss a sales meeting, you're going to be in somebody's office, and they know that. And then when you talk about leadership, then it's a matter of cost,